So I don't know about you, but I love secondhand bookstores and vintage books. I have a small collection of Unitarian Universalist vintage books, which we can talk about another time. And I love secondhand stores and vintage books so much, I made a mistake yesterday. I was in Kaimuki having lunch at Pig and the Lady. And I love that place. Started at Pacific Gateway, very good. Thank you for that trivia. Yes. And when you park there, you see this sign that says vintage books. I'm like, oh, this is my opportunity. Maybe I'll go pick up some vintage books. So I walk next door, and I walk in, I see some books, and the lady at the desk says, can I help you? I said, oh, I'm just browsing for some vintage books. She laughs because it's not a bookstore at all. It's a speakeasy, which I did not know. I was tricked. It was such a good speakeasy. And then she opens the secret door, and there's a bar in the back, which I told them I would come back to try, but I was so embarrassed that I just left. But I do go to real secondhand bookstores, and I recently picked up this book. And if you look at it, the spine is cracked, the pages are dog-eared, and some notes are written in the margins. And given the state of it, I wonder if it barely made it through the thrift store. And I suspect someone almost threw this away. I bought it for $1. Not because it's perfect, because it's not, it's pretty worn, but because it lived a full life and deserved one more reader. And today I want to talk about second chances, about how we, like this book, don't lose our value when we show our wear, when we've been marked by experience, when we look ready to be discarded. And sometimes our most beautiful chapters are still unwritten. And I see signs of this, of second chances in nature almost everywhere I look. Every sunrise is a page turning. Trees that lose their leaves in autumn are preparing for a chapter that we can't see yet. And even our own bodies know this rhythm, right? Every heartbeat is another line written. Every breath, another word added to the story of who we are becoming. And speaking of new chapters, about a month or so ago, I got over an illness that kept me in bed for a bit. Maybe you've had this same experience. It's because when I stepped outside for the first time in days, I really felt something. I felt it in my chest. This very ordinary world suddenly seemed extraordinary simply because I could move through it again. The cool air on my face felt like a blessing. The sun on my skin, I remembered what it was like just to walk outside, and I thought, the story continues, another chapter. But we don't usually think of these ordinary moments as new chapters, do we? We save that feeling for New Year's Day, for milestone birthdays. We tell ourselves that renewal requires a special occasion. But here's what I believe. You've had many chapters begin just since you walked through those doors this morning. Hundreds of opportunities to turn the page, to let go of the sentence that came before, to write something different. And the person that walked through those doors is already part of a draft. You're being written anew right now in this very breath. Of course, knowing this and feeling it are two different things, aren't they? Because sometimes the hardest chapter to revise is the one we wrote about ourselves. Sometimes the harshest editor we'll ever face is the one that looks at us in the mirror. And I want to share with you one of my hardest chapters. Years ago, when I was at a low point personally, tired, frustrated, feeling like I was failing at everything that mattered, I said some very harsh, very personally hurtful words to a friend that I'd known for a long time. I knew the exact words to use to cut because I knew him so well. And when we know someone deeply, we know their tender places, don't we? We know the words that'll land like stones. And I regretted it almost before the sentence left my mouth. and I watched his face change. And then I went home. For weeks, I couldn't let it go. I replayed that moment in the shower while driving at 2 a.m. when the sleep wouldn't come. I'd be in mid-conversation with someone else and suddenly feel my stomach drop because I remembered that shame lived in my body, a tightness in my chest every morning, a heaviness I carried in my shoulders. I started avoiding places I might run into him. I rehearsed apologies in my head, but couldn't bring myself to deliver them because there was a part of me that felt like I didn't deserve to feel better. Then finally, I worked up the courage to reach out. I expected anger, or worse, that cool, distant politeness that tells you that door is closed forever. Instead, I received grace. My friend smiled gently, and he said, "Thank you for saying that. I forgive you." We hugged. And his forgiveness was a gift, a real one. Seeking it, receiving it, letting it repair what I had broken, that mattered. That was necessary. And yet, for weeks after, I still carried that weight. I'd hesitate before calling him, wondering if he really meant it. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I didn't feel like I deserved such quick grace because something in me believed that forgiveness required more penance, more proof that I had changed. And it must have shown on me because eventually he said to me gently, "You know, you can forgive yourself too." And I remember where I was standing when he said it, because I realized that my friend closed the book on what happened. He turned the page and was ready for the next chapter of our friendship. But I was the one who kept rereading that painful paragraph over and over, refusing to move forward. I've seen how this affects people in the hospital during my hospital chaplaincy work. I've sat at the bedside of people, and there's one person in particular in their 50s who was very ill. They lived a hard life, made choices they regretted, and hurt people they loved. And somewhere along the way, they arrived at the conclusion that their illness was a punishment for what they did. Their suffering was the universe settling a score. And I sat with them in that room, and I tried. I offered every word of grace I had. I named their worth. I named the love that held them. And they would listen. They would nod, and they'd look at the ceiling with those eyes that told me none of it was really getting through. The shame they held was older than I was. It had been there longer than the illness, and it became a lens through which they saw everything, including their own suffering in that hospital bed. I left that room with my heart in pieces. Not because I failed, though I think that was part of it, but because I understood something I haven't fully grasped before. Shame, when it's carried long enough, stops feeling like something we have. It starts feeling like something we are. And no one from the outside can reach in and remove that. That has to come from within. So when we wrong someone, we should seek to make it right, of course, apologize and seek forgiveness. We should do the work of repair. That matters, and nothing I say today should discount that. But sometimes, even when we've done all of that work, even when forgiveness has been offered and received, we forget to extend that same grace to ourselves. We keep rereading the chapter everyone else has moved past. And when we've refused to forgive ourselves, we become like a book that slams shut. pages pressed so tightly together that no light can get through, no reader can find us, and no new chapter can begin. But when we forgive ourselves, when we finally, gently close that chapter and allow ourselves to turn the page, something opens. We become readable again. Love can annotate our margins with new notes, and we stop becoming a closed, finished story and start becoming alive again, still being written. Our Universalist ancestors understood this. They believed in universal salvation, the radical idea that no one is beyond the reach of love. No soul is written off, not one story too damaged to continue. And nestled in that belief is something profound, that we are all worthy of grace, every single one of us. And the person in the mirror who disappointed you yesterday, who failed last week, who's been carrying that shame for years, is also worthy of that grace. And I used to think self-criticism was humility. I thought beating myself up was virtuous, a form of spiritual discipline. If I was hard enough on myself, it meant I took my failures seriously. But lately, I've come to see that differently. If I'm made of the same sacred stuff, that same creative force that hung the stars, that breathed life into me, then this relentless cruelty toward myself is its own kind of violence. And worse, I think it creates a drought for everyone else that I claim to love, because a closed book can't be shared. Maybe right now you're thinking about words you said to your child last week that you'd give anything to take back, or the friend you've hurt, or the way you've been numbing your pain in ways that frighten you. You may know the chapter I'm talking about, the one you keep rereading at 3 a.m. And if you're sitting here thinking, this isn't for me, I've done something unforgivable, can I tell you something? The fact that you're here, the fact that you still feel ache, means your story isn't over. Closed books don't hurt. And your pain is proof that love is still writing you, still hoping for the next chapter. Beloved, grace is not about tearing out pages. We can't unwrite what we've written, but we can let those chapters become part of a larger story, where the painful parts give depth to everything that follows. You may know people who are good at this, people who've stumbled badly and found their way back. There's something different and unique about their kindness. Their patience runs deeper. And when they sit with you in their own failure, your own failure, they're not performing compassion. They're offering something hard-won. Their worn pages are exactly what makes them worth reading. And I think this is what community is for. To remind each other that no chapter is the final word. Here in this circle of imperfect people, we practice resurrection. Not once, not twice, but every single time we gather. So can I ask you something right now? In this sacred moment, is there a chapter you've been refusing to close? Some page you keep returning to, reading the same lines of shame over and over? Something perhaps you've messed up that you've been waiting, maybe for years, for permission to try again? Well, beloved, consider this your permission slip. Not from me, but from the great love that holds all of our stories. From this community that sees your sacred worth, even if you can't. Because you don't have to keep rereading that chapter. You can gently close it with compassion for the person who wrote it. You can turn the page. And if you're willing, take a breath with me now. Let that permission settle in your body. Your shoulders, your chest, your hands. feel what it might be like to set the book you've been clutching so tightly aside. You're worthy of the next chapter. You're worthy of finding out what happens next. Now, remember this old book? What if its most important reader hasn't found it yet? What if after I'm done with it, someone picks it up in another thrift store in another town and discovers exactly the words that they need to begin again? I think that's how love works. Through ordinary things, through worn covers, through cracked spines, through stories that got passed along because someone decided they weren't ready for the discard pile. And when you walk out of here today, you're going to face that mirror again. And when you do, I want you to remember that you're looking at the story the universe isn't finished writing yet. And your next chapter might be the most important one. You're not damaged goods. You're not ready for the discard pile. You're a sacred text written by forces that are larger than yourself, edited by experience, and made more beautiful by every reader who has loved you, who has been made more precious by every page you've survived. And you're also the author, pen in hand, deciding what comes next. Every morning is a blank page, and this community of love is waiting with patience, with hope, with faith of who you're becoming to see what beautiful story you're going to write today. So let us all turn the page. The world provides with second chances, and your next chapter is waiting. May it be so. Amen.